Curiosity Stream, we've walked with dinosaurs. We've explored our prehistoric planet, and we were always told the same story. Extinction came from the sky. But what if dinosaurs survived? Amazing Dino World 2. Watch it now on Curiosity Stream. With monthly, annual, and bundle plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Here's to holiday traditions, the ones that started as a quick laugh but are now irreplaceable. Here's to the recipes that require Grandma's mixing bowl because they just won't taste the same without it. The Chinette brand believes in spending more time on traditions and less time cleaning up. With the Chinette Crystal, Comfort, and Classic collections, we can help make your holiday celebrations better for years to come. Here's to mixing timeless traditions with a few new ones. Here's to us, all of us. To find out more, visit mychinette.com.
Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to MovieFilm. It is episode 275, brought to you by Mr. Boy Productions. I am Zachy Hassan, and I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Dude, I was thinking that we'd have like all these big franchise movies to discuss, and like we usually do. But the story seems to be all the big franchise movies that are just being shunted to the side while people rewatch Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I saw this morning, I think last week Meg 2 came out, right? And so then it was Barbie, Meg 2, then Oppenheimer, 1, 2, 3 box office. And then this week it is back now to Barbie number 1, Oppenheimer number 2. Just wild. I mean, this is one of those things that you just don't see very often, right? Where a movie clutches to number 1 for weeks in a row. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I saw another interesting statistic where Oppenheimer, I want to say, is nearing 300 million domestic, and it may have a record for being the highest grossing film to never reach number 1 at the box office.
Wow.
Isn't that fascinating?
That's amazing.
I mean, it's a humongous hit and everybody loves it, but it may never reach number 1. It's just kind of fascinating.
It does. I mean, there's so many factors here we can look at and learn from, right? Because this summer has been the one where just expectations or preconceptions are just completely tossed in the bin.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you had told me at the beginning of summer that a movie I'd never even heard of called Sound of Freedom would make more money than Mission Impossible, which I was wondering, like, will it make Maverick numbers? like, huh? And then I don't even know what the last voyage of the Demeter is, the Barbie Oppenheimer domination. I'm sure we assumed that would do well, but I don't know that we thought that would be we probably would have gone like Mission Impossible, Indiana Jones, those sorts of things.
Right. I definitely, I assumed Barbie and Oppenheimer would be in the mix, but there is sort of the way in which both of those films have really commanded the zeitgeist. And by the way, we're on the clock now. Just wait for everybody to break bad on them.
Yeah, right. Sure.
That's going to happen very shortly if it hasn't fully happened already. But it really, it's kind of it's. I hope that studios take the right lessons, and maybe because of the strikes and everything going on, there is an opportunity to reset and sort of move away from the mercenary resurrection of franchises that don't necessarily need to keep coming back.
Yeah, and I think honestly the lesson to take from this is big swings. Because it's not unheard of to make a movie based on a toy, but this, I still cannot believe that a studio heard this pitch and went, okay, make that. With Barbie,
right.
Like, it's such a wild, weird, wacky swing, and it is already, made $1 billion in like 11 days. Right. And then likewise with Oppenheimer, where a studio, I mean, I know you got the Nolan factor, so you can't divorce that from the conversation, but making this big IMAX biopic of a World War II figure, and that would be like the second dominating force of the summer. You know, it's like, don't think you know what people want. Go with your gut for what is good. You know, like that's how. Yeah. That's
no. Well, just to add to that, I mean, certainly something like Oppenheimer harkens back to sort of our golden era, if you will, in the 80s and 90s, where it was less franchise driven and there was more of, we've talked before about like John Grisham adaptations and stuff like that. But even something like JFK, the movie JFK, which was sold on Oliver Stone, like, this is his thing, and it ended up becoming, again, a very zeitgeisty type thing, but it's certainly not a normal blockbuster.
But likewise too, I mean, we just think of all the movies we love from the 90s. Or actually, I was just thinking about flipping through channels the other day, just seeing like Forrest Gump, which is like an iconic film now, and I know it's based on a book, but I don't think it's a book many people had read, right? And it's just this crazy story, and then you got like The Rock, which is like a crazy action film, not based on anything. And you've got like, just Speed. It's, it's just, I don't know, what a thing on a bus. Like, it's just like all the big movies that we love that we still talk about and celebrate all these years later were just big swings, and studios went with their gut and were like, this sounds cool. Maybe people think it's cool. And, those movies have lived on and been imitated or repeat, like Point Break, right? And then you just Total Recall. Then you just keep remaking these things. And I just,
That's right.
I want more of these original things now, on top of everything else. Like, you just kind of wish you could have it all. And that's going back to what you were saying. I just sort of hope that's the lesson here. I mean, yes, Barbie's based on an IP. Oppenheimer has the Nolan factor, but they do still feel like, on paper, kind of risky. And it's just really cool to see them succeed to the degree that they have.
Yeah, and I think the lesson of Barbie's success is not, despite what some of these folks in the industry are saying, the lesson is not, we got to hurry up and make a Stretch Armstrong movie. Right, yeah. That'd be a bad idea.
Yeah, unless you have a take. Like, if you have, like, that's what I think when we were talking about Barbie, you had mentioned that it resembles the Lego movie in some ways. And it's like, yeah, it does. Like, some of its bones kind of resemble that film. But what I think it did really well was the meat on those bones are very Barbie specific and also have something on their mind, So like, if you want to make a Stretch Armstrong movie, I'm sure to some degree it'll resemble some other toy IP, but like, do you have anything on your mind? Like, then okay, then I'm kind of curious. But if it's just like, hey, he comes to New York and he wanders around and wonders what a latte is, it's like, well, then I don't really care,
See, I'm worried that somebody somewhere in the creative chain just heard just what you just said.
I was even embarrassed by what I said because I didn't even think that was a good enough parody of what I'm trying to say. But that would be hilarious. Like a year later. There we go.
Son of a
latte. I'm a latte, muscles stretch.
Oh no.
Voiced by Channing Tatum. And then he realizes like, he has an existential crisis, 2/3 through. And I don't know.
I can stretch my body, but can I stretch my mind?
Yes. Zach, actually, let's hang up and like start outlining this.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
But that being said, you just finally got around. This summer has been kind of weird also because you've been traveling and stuff. So there are sort of gaps in our coverage this summer.
Yes.
For example, before we even get to the one we're about to talk about, Transformers Rise of the Beasts came out. And I remember saying to you earlier, I was like, one of the things I most look forward to is discussing a new Transformers movie with you. And I did not get that opportunity. I was like, those are always like, I watch those movies just so I can discuss them. And
okay, here's the thing. I did actually, because of real life, miss it when it came out. And then I had the thought, I saw that it was streaming now, and I was like, oh, I'll probably never see that. But I will admit, I got this weird sort of FOMO-ish feeling when you were talking about, seeing it and getting to talk about it with you. And I'm like, yeah, those are fun to talk about. So with that in mind, I mean, moving ahead, we were talking off mic that, a lot of movies in the fall and possibly the winter seem to be getting nudged into next year due to the strikes going on.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be an opportunity to do a better late than never Transformers discussion. Maybe I can get on
Transformers
that.
Rise of the Beasts conversation.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay.
That may happen. Well, then in that case, I'll hold off on that. But you finally watched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Yes, which this was sort of fascinating to, being someone who is invested in movies the way that we are. And, you look forward to all the big releases and want to catch everything and see the conversations. And this was one I just completely missed. I was out of the country at the time. I knew it was coming out this summer, but I wasn't quite sure when. And then I just started seeing nothing but responses to the film, just on social media, articles, and people just going crazy for it. And I was like, oh, wow. I mean, I assumed it'd be good, but like, wow, this is like a huge thing that I'm not witnessing at all. Like it's completely out of my view, And so I was like, oh, I really want to catch that. But then as summer goes on, there's other films to catch and stay on top of, for the show and whatnot. And I just missed it. I missed it in theaters, and I knew I was going to catch it because I really liked the first one. So now that it is streaming as of last week, I think, I started the first 5 minutes and I went, wait, no, I want to rewatch the first one because I haven't seen it since the theater. And I remember enjoying it, but if I had to take a quiz, I don't think I would do very well on it. I just remember like, little funny moments from it and stuff. So I instead watched the first one, Into the Spider-Verse, and was like, man, what a good movie. Like,
yeah. Well, and it's crazy that
it's
already 5 years old. Like that's kind of nuts.
I know. And it's amazing because Across the Spider-Verse, I think is made like, over $500 million or something like that. And the first one was like a hit. Like it wasn't like this phenomenon necessarily. I remember us seeing it because of course we were going to see it and then being like, oh, we need to tell people this is good. Because I had friends that weren't going to see it because it was animated, thinking like, oh,
that's right.
It's kind of ancillary. Like maybe I'll see it someday or something. We're like, no, this is a legit great film. So anyway, I really thankful I did revisit it because a lot of things and themes and little moments from that film crop back up in Across the Spider-Verse, which I adored. Just absolutely adored. Like, I think when it started, I was a little bit like, whoa, this is a lot. Like, even on my television, not on a big movie screen. I mean, it is so much. And I think your brain, I'm speaking for myself, I suppose. My brain calibrated to all the bombastic visual audio nature being thrown at me. And then you're in, like you are just plugged in. And I started thinking, man, can you imagine another film trying to do this? Where like a world is literally watercolor, and as someone is getting sad, all the colors are melting behind them, and these action sequences that are kind of impressionistic. I mean, the only thing that sometimes makes sense is the characters you're looking at. So it's really about sticking with them versus everything that's happening around them. And then you've got all this, if like a drum snare hits something, you see like pops of color in the back. Like this movie should be a mess. Like, and it absolutely works. Like I can't, you know what I mean? Like just nudge it a degree this way, and this is incomprehensible, right? And it just absolutely precisely sticks the landing to be a perfect work of art. And it doesn't, the story, and that's the thing, as beautiful as it is, the story, the characters, the heart do not drown in the visuals. You know what I mean? Like when I think of that movie, I'm remembering all the feelings I had during all the moments and the heartbreak and the triumphs and the reunions and the losses. And Oh man.
Yeah.
What a ride.
No,
What a ride.
I mean, to
yeah.
that point, just to really underscore your point, you know, some of my most memorable, like the stuff that really stayed with me is just Miles Morales talking to his mom.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, I thought about, there's a sequence, where they're on a roof talking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I mean, several minutes into that conversation, I think I realized like, wow, this is amazing. Like this movie's being patient, you know, like,
Yeah.
and you can imagine, you know, an editor or someone or giving notes being sort of antsy, like, I'm a little worried we're gonna, you know, like maybe we should keep moving here. But it's like, it all matters. You know, all of this has to do with what's going to motivate these characters later. And I should say, those moments aren't boring. Like, they're so heartfelt and sincere. And I mean, yeah, when he's speaking to his dad on that roof as Spider-Man, you know, and it's just, like those are the most delicious moments of the movie. And him and Gwen, you know, and him and Peter from the first film, you know, it's just, like I said, those are the things that I remember more than the action, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah, late to the game. News extra across the universe is great, says Brian.
Well, it's and this is gonna sound obvious because of the way it ends on a cliffhanger, but I got heavy Back to the Future Part 2 vibes.
Totally.
Right. And again, not just because of that cliffhanger, but the way in which it takes the foundation, right? Because Back to the Future Part 1, which when you come down to it, it's a fairly small story.
Yes.
But the second one is like, okay, we've built that foundation. Let's really build it up and out. And I think this one does that in ways that I think very similar to Back to the Future too. I think there are people who are like, you know, I thought it was too big, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's a wrong reaction. For me, I totally tracked with it, but it feels like a natural outgrowth of where the first movie left things, you know?
It's so funny you say that, the words you're saying right now, because I wrote down literally wonderful extension of the first film.
Yeah.
Like it takes, well, and there was a part of me that also thought, because it does continue the whole collider collapse and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do I want to see a story just with Miles? Like just in New York, you know, kind of doing his thing. And at some point, yeah, I do kind of, you know, and I do get that in the video game and you know, I'm sure, you know, the comics, which I haven't read, but
this
as
is the
movie
Spider-Verse.
went along, but I was gonna say, as the movie went along, then I did actually think of Back to the Future 2, where it was like, it's taking what we know and building on it and extrapolating things and creating this insane mythology that is just, the heart is always at the center of.
Yeah.
And so it just feels brilliant, honestly. It feels brilliant.
Yeah, I think there's some very funny moments. You get great cameos, and I love the way it weaves in the live action iterations of the Spider-Man story in a way that makes this feel like, well, no, this is a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
They're all connected, and I think that you know, I saw like I think it was like an ad on Facebook or something. It was like a Sony ad, and it had like, you know, sort of like it was like a montage or a collage, if you will, of all the Spider-Mans. So you have like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland, and then you have the Miles character, you know, from these films.
How long was Neil Armstrong actually on the moon? When did Europe start speaking English? Did Marco Polo really go to China? CuriosityStream is the streaming service for all things history, plus science, wildlife, and more. What's the real story behind the Mona Lisa? We've got that. What caused the collapse of Rome? We know. Where did we find mankind's earliest ancestor? Come find out. For the holidays, give the gift of curiosity with 25% off gift cards for your curious cohorts. It's holiday shopping season at curiositystream.com/gift.
Glittering ornaments, fragrant wreaths, and wide-eyed wonder await you and your family this Christmas at Biltmore. Enjoy a guided tour of America's largest home, filled with shimmering Christmas trees and adorned in all its Yuletide glory. Then make the most of your visit and imagine yourself as a holiday guest of the Vanderbilts at one of our overnight properties. Explore overnight stays and ticket packages at Biltmore.com.
And it's like, if you want to watch all Spider-Man, it's from Sony or whatever the ad was, I forget. But I saw that ad and I was like, it seems probable that there will be a live action Miles Morales at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you watch this movie, you're like, we don't need a live action Miles. Like, this is Miles.
Yeah. Yes.
And he feels so real and so vibrant and so alive that I don't, you know what I mean? Like I was like, this can be your Miles,
Yeah. Getting into the mixed media of it all also that takes place in this movie. I mean, it's just incredible how well it works. Like I say, like 1 degree off and it's like a catastrophe, but somehow it made me marvel too at, no pun intended, thinking like, like I think I had some sort of thought like this movie, could you even fathom this movie like 20 years ago? Like this movie, like watching it, would your brain be like, and not just because the visuals are so crazy, but like the way that it interacts with so many other movies and puts elements from other films in this. And it's just this cacophony that I feel like we had to work toward, in entertainment. And it's so cool to see people then taking where audiences have been led and then making something like this, or even Everything Everywhere All at Once too, where that movie's so nuts, but audiences have gotten to a place where they can go to that movie and not have their brains fried and instead be like, I should call my mom, like, I mean, that's insane. It's so cool.
But I mean, we've talked about The Flash several times this summer, and now both of us were like, no, it's good. I do think it had the misfortune of arriving like a week after this movie.
That is a good point. And I mean, it's well known I'm a defender of The Flash here. We both are, I think. But like this movie is definitely on another level.
Yeah, right. Well, that's, I mean, it's sort of like this is like the final statement about what you can do in a multiverse thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And it wows everybody. And then the Flash arrives like 2 weeks later and it's like Milhouse with the horse. Like, I brought a horsey.
That is, yeah. And you know what though? But there's like it reminds me of like, superhero films from maybe like 10 years ago or 15 years ago or something like that. But I like those things. Like, I don't want everything to be insane. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I do want like I was gonna say grounded, even that movie is far from grounded.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of, Zachy, I want it all.
Well, this summer we got, if not all, we got a lot,
We got a lot. We got a
lot. I mean, like, big picture, when you look at the summer releases, I mean, we've come away at least satisfied with the majority of them, so that certainly says something.
I think I can't imagine the math, excuse me, in my head, but it does feel like there are probably less releases than there may have been in 2019 or something like that, right? But for all the major releases, I don't think there was one I didn't enjoy. Like, it's varying degrees, but
for the majority of them, I would agree with that. And by the way, it's I think that the when the film ends, and I mean, I think you knew going in that this is part 2 of 3, right?
I did, yeah. But I can imagine not knowing that, how disappointing that must have been. Yeah,
well, that's what I heard after the fact. People got real like, oh no, and I was like, yeah, but there's going to be a third one. Like, you know what I mean? It's one thing if they're, if it's doing like I don't know, Lost in Space from 1998, where it just ends without resolving the story, and they're like, hey, fingers crossed. But I'm like, well, we know there's going to be a third one. So
yeah, I can come at it from all angles. If I didn't know and I was in the theater and then it was like, well, see you later, kind of like a part 2 or part 3 is coming, I would have been like, oh, I can imagine that feeling. Yeah. I also have a feeling where at this moment where there was an article that came out, I think it was on Vulture, where they interviewed animators who worked on this movie that basically said it was a nightmare. And
right.
with that in mind, it sounds like the process of making this movie is no easy feat and quite punishing on people. So this movie, the third film, was expected to come out in early 2024. And I think it's been pushed, I want to say, to 2025 due to strikes and everything. But I think it's probably not surprising that to imagine it would have been pushed anyway, just due to the nature of making one of these movies. So there is a little part of me that is sad where I don't even know if it's going to come out in 2025, like at least in the date they projected. So it's, if we knew with certainty, like, oh yeah, we're halfway done, like Lord of the Rings. Hey, it's coming out this Christmas, that Christmas, the next Christmas. I think I'd feel like, all right, okay, cool. Marked on my calendar. But at this point, it feels a little like, I can't wait to see that someday.
Sure. Okay. Sure. It's not, and it's not like Back to the Future 3 where, the
coming
trailer
next summer.
Yeah, exactly.
But my final thing to say on that is, once all three sit on the shelf together, they exist and they're right next to each other. Well, then that's like a wonderful thing you can imagine with your family or something, and being like, all right, part 3 coming tomorrow. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Like that, once all is said and done, it'll be great.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. So the character of Spider-Man 2099, he's an interesting one, certainly for me, because I used to read the comic when I was a kid, Spider-Man 2099. And as somebody who's coming in cold, what did you make of that character? Does he come off like a villain to you, or complicated, or what's your verdict on him? Voiced by Oscar Isaac, by the way.
I just feel like I could fix him. No, I what I loved about that character was that I kept feeling differently about him.
Yeah.
Like at first I was like, oh, okay, like he's the brooding one. I'm like, oh, wait, is he a villain? And then it was more like, oh, he's been through so much. Like, and then he's complicated. And that is really enjoyable, because my sense that I get is that at his core, he's probably a good guy, but he's been calloused.
That's right.
And so I don't know what that's going to look like in the next film, but I don't like everything he's doing, but I can understand the things he's doing,
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think they did a good job. I think Oscar Isaac is such a perfect choice to voice the character. And I mean, he could play him in live action because he looks so similar to, what's interesting to me about Spider-Man 29, at least in the comics, is that unlike Spider-Man, who's always got the one-liners, Spider-Man 29 is just kind of a dick.
Yes, right.
And they kept that characterization, which I liked. The other thing that really I found intriguing and what was this whole notion of a canon event, right?
Yes.
And what a great meta commentary that is on how we as fans interact with these things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because it's made textual, where you have Miguel saying to Miles, you're not supposed to be here. You don't belong here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that so neatly sums up how so many quote unquote fans treated the introduction of the Miles Morales character, back in the day, whenever it was, like more than 10 years ago at this point. Right. Oh, he's not the real Spider-Man. Because Peter Parker is the real Spider-Man, and you have people like, I'm not going to call him Spider-Man, literally saying that, right?
And it's such a counter to the first film, like the final statement is anyone can wear the mask. Yeah,
anyone can wear the mask, right? And it's, I may have said this on the show before. Like I remember that. I remember being a kid and I loved He-Man, but I was always like, well, I can, He-Man doesn't look like me,
right? Sure.
But Spider-Man, you put on the mask, and
right.
Anybody can look like Spider-Man, and so that's made textual both in the first film and then the second film. It's really pushing back on how precious fans are. Canon, right? I mean, the word canon has religious origins, and we apply that to these things that are ultimately fiction, right?
Right.
Is it canon? If it's not canon, then I'm going to ignore it. Yeah, but it's all fiction.
Right.
Right? Like, I mean, it's like Star Wars, right? Like all the stuff now that all the fiction that was published in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, right? That's all legends now. So it's not canon anymore.
Right.
So I loved it 10 years ago, but I don't care about it now because it's not canon.
Right.
And so, like, I love how this movie is really poking its finger in the eye of that whole mentality, right? Because it's like, well, who determines what's canon,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, right? I mean, that's essentially, that's Miles's own struggle. He's like, like the idea you're treating my wanting to save my dad as an inconvenience.
Right.
Right. I mean, I love all this, and I love. He's just like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. Right. Like, I love it.
Yep.
Shamik Moore, who plays Miles, it's just like he has created such a potent character that you forget that this is an animated personality.
It's so funny we say that, because when you said that I'm going to do my own thing, like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but I was remembering that moment, but I wasn't thinking about a cartoon, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
like these characters are so well realized. Gwen, and that's what I love too. Is it's not sometimes in a movie the only interesting person is the your number one, your hero or whoever, and it's just like everyone's got so much going on, in their lives that they're applying to everything that's happening in front of them. It's just, this is easily one of my favorite movies of the year.
So, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And by the way, worth mentioning that Shea Wiggum, who we were just singing the praises of a couple weeks ago in Mission Impossible, he's the voice of Gwen's dad.
I did not put that together.
That guy, man, I like Shea Wiggum. I don't know. Maybe it's controversial, Brian. I don't care who I piss off. This Shea Wiggum guy, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of his.
Me too. Wait, I have to, just on a filmmaking, whatever sort of tangent. It was interesting to me because then I went down a rabbit hole, as I tend to do after I watched it, and was reading about how there were different versions of this film.
That's right. Yeah, the digital version that you watched is apparently peppered with several slight differences from the theatrical version.
And which I understand that is the third version of the film. Like, there were two versions in the theater, and then the third is sort of the final, I don't know what you want, like combination of all of it or something. Mm-hmm. But I was looking, people had made like TikToks and whatnot of the side by sides of the changes, and it was kind of interesting. Like, actually,
in this one, the Ewoks blink. And
yes. Yeah, but for example, specifically when you brought up I'm going to do my own thing, he had a line after that in the first week of release
where he said, on second thought, maybe I won't. And they decided to cut that out.
I don't want to hurt your feelings. Yeah, no. Yeah, no, but that was taken out like a week later, or the second line was taken out. Basically, he's like, sorry, I gotta go home or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
And they left it with do my own thing, which I think is.
Yeah, the version I saw had that line in it because I saw the press screening.
Oh, okay, yeah, and then the sort of AI helper,
Lila.
There's like different versions of things that she does.
Mm-hmm. She takes a selfie.
Interesting, yeah. You just and I guess there was like mix issues too. Like the first week,
yes,
it's hard to hear vocal stuff, but then they fixed that in the second version, tweaked a couple things, and then, like I said, my understanding is then the digital is the third and final version. Interesting,
I guess there's a little bit more flexibility when you're dealing with something that's completely digital to be able to goof around with it,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I brought this up a couple of weeks ago, but it makes me think of like The Shining, where there's this sort of mysterious, mythical scene that's been cut from
at the end. At the end, that's
yes,
right.
and people are like, "Oh, I remember this scene in a hospital," and
it's kind of people have like a Mandela effect.
Exactly. But the thing is that scene does exist, and it was there for a week, and Kubrick was like, "Nah," and he had everyone literally scissor it out, cut it out. And so it's amazing. You have to take all these prints and do that, but
they actually have to physically alter that. Yeah. Here it's just like hit save. You just instead of hitting save as, you just hit save.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of fascinating.
One thing I did want to mention is the character of I think it's Praviter Prabhakar.
Yes,
probably screwing that up. Pavitr Pravakar. That's the Spider-Man India. And, I have a nephew who he could not stop talking about Spider-Man India, and we always talk about representation. And, for me, I'm like, well, Spiderman's and Spider-Man India is that other one. But my nephew is like, man, he was so cool. You know what I mean?
That is so freaking awesome.
That's the stuff that like I realize it's easy to be very jaded, and you're like, but this is the stuff that matters, like right. Seeing this character you love intertwined with your own culture and what that means to you. So I just thought that was neat,
Yeah, and it's cool too that it wasn't just sort of like a fleeting cameo either. Like we get like a good scene with him,
and it's essential to the story.
Exactly. Yeah. And like he his personality really came across, and we got to know his universe a little bit. And that was a good sequence.
You caught Donald Glover's cameo?
Yes. Yeah. That was cool. So, I was like, this is just cool. This movie's like so punk rock. Like, it's
even amazing. Without Spider Punk. Even without Spider Punk, it's still punk.
It was fun too.
Daniel Kaluuya having a blast playing that character.
Yeah, that was fun.
Donald Glover playing the MCU version of Uncle Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, okay, so they're seeding something going on with Miles Morales in the MCU down the line.
Right.
At some point.
Right.
So I guess we will reconvene whenever Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out. We don't know when.
Can't come soon enough.
Yeah. It may be a while, though.
Yeah.
So moderate expectations accordingly.
Right. Yeah.
Let's take a short break. We'll come back right after this.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry. We were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
And we are back. And hey, Brian, how's it going?
Good. Happy to be talking to you on this Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. How's in Los Angeles, where you reside, thereabouts? Yes. Are you witnessing the daily impact of the strikes, plural?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, certainly with relationships, people I know who are not working right now, and it's, I mean, it's causing great strain, and I think it's definitely admirable. Like, that's what I want to lead with. I think it's admirable what these people are fighting for, because as we've said before, I mean, this is a real important moment as we move forward with technology and the way, studios are conducting business with writers and actors, and just trying to make entertainment, compensating people, taking care of people to keep up with the ever-changing, fast-evolving times. It is important to do that. You have to do that.
Yeah.
So definitely full support there. But yeah, it's hard, like seeing people, Instagram stories and talking with people. And actually, I had lunch with a writer the other day, and we were right in front of Culver Studios in Culver City, and seeing everybody out there with their signs and everything. And it's like, oh man, I mean, nobody wants to be doing this. We just want to. They want to work out something fair for everyone. And so, but yes, to answer your question, you can definitely feel it throughout town.
Now, as we are recording this, there is some daylight. I guess the daylight is closing between the AMPTP and the Writers Guild, because they're back to the table. So possibly, this conversation may be outdated by the time the episode drops, but I think what's fascinating is the fact that you have SAG-AFTRA and the WGA on strike at the same time. And you talk about if I can borrow a Christopher Nolan term, a pincer move.
Yes.
Not a temporal pincer, a financial pincer. That really, I mean, they have to come to some kind of resolution. Like you can't just hand wave this away.
Yes. I mean, what is today's August 13th, I think. And as I understand it, right, the studios and the Writers Guild representatives have spoken, and I think something was proposed from the studios, and now it's being evaluated.
And right? This is after 100 days of striking.
Yeah.
Which is I think that I was reading an article about how fast streaming, right, free ad supported streaming service, those are the ones that are seeing the most growth financially year to year.
Yeah, sure.
And that's a discussion you and I have had before, because it's like, well, duh, because advertising is how all of this makes sense. That's the only way to make it make sense. Streaming just fundamentally as its own thing doesn't make sense. Like even now, due to the strike, you have a lot of these streaming shows are now being ported over to broadcast because they don't have any shows, right?
Right.
And I think hopefully there's a little bit of a come to Jesus moment on the part of a lot of these studios who were like, well, we can have these short seasons and we can just, screw with people's ability to plan out an entire year.
Right.
I think that we're in for a correction, because streaming only works as an adjunct to all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it tells you something that the number one show on Netflix right now is Suits. I think it gets to, there's been like a 6, 7, 8 year period where the studios have just gone hog wild spending on content for streaming services. And because of the lack of any union protections and payout agreements and things like that, they were like, the good times are going to keep rolling. And again, it comes back to what I've said all along, where it's like, how do you make this make sense financially?
Right.
Not only in terms of,
there's got to be an end to it. Like you're going to sell as many subscriptions as you can, but then at some point it just ends.
Yeah. I mean, look, a good example for me, it's like Paramount Plus, which if I were to guess, I would say that's one of the streaming services that probably won't be around in like 5 years. Right.
Sure.
But they have carved out at least one niche for themselves, which is we're the home of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something where, okay, we're banking on X number of Star Trek fans paying, whatever a month to watch new Star Trek. And hey, I'm among them. I'll subscribe so I can watch Star Trek. But how many of me are there, right?
Right.
But that being said, when you watch those Star Trek shows that they have on streaming, they're written with act breaks. And
right.
So there's at least some implicit understanding that, well, if we were to shift this over to broadcast, there's another revenue stream,
Yeah. Right.
Some of these streaming, like Stranger Things,
Mm-hmm.
That's Netflix, wholly owned by Netflix. I don't believe that's ever had a broadcast a window.
I don't think so.
Right. So then you say, okay, well, once you max out on the number of people, and Netflix, by the way, is a bit of a unicorn. Stranger Things is a bit of a unicorn because of it has sort of been this evergreen for Netflix. But even that, once it's done, it's going to, right, they're dropping the final season whenever.
Mm-hmm.
How much will Netflix be able to count on people continuing to subscribe to watch Stranger Things?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's just the whole model doesn't make sense in the long term unless you've built in other ways of making money. So all of that is happening now at the same time as these people are like, hey, pay us what's right and don't screw around. Don't create 10 episode seasons so that now we have to plan for work that normally would take a whole year,
Right.
It's a bunch of hugger-mugger, Brian.
Yeah, it's all kind of wait, what? Sorry, I got stuck with hugger bugger. It made me think of Hinky from The Fugitive. How about Hinky?
I say Hinky.
Yeah, I love it.
How about bullshit, Brian?
How about bullshit, Sam? Yeah. But no, it's it all was going to come to a head at some point, and here we are. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this evens out.
Well, related to this is the news that Disney apparently is going to stop releasing physical media for their releases in Australia. As of now, it's just Australia.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? I think Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is the last physical media that Disney is going to release in Australia.
So at all.
That's my understanding, yeah. Disney, yeah, bananas. Disney at least. But yeah, it's like, it feels a little ominous in a weird way, doesn't it? I mean,
right. Yeah.
I mean, maybe you don't need to mass produce them anymore, but is it really the consumership so low that just not going to do it anymore, or Disney Plus?
I mean, I think it is
so high. Maybe maybe because I can't even remember the last time I bought something physically. So
right. I mean, I think, and I know plenty of people who listen to this show swear by physical media, and I'm all about it. Like I believe that as a means of preserving this stuff, it is important, but that's while acknowledging that the sales of discs, forget 4K, because I don't think that's really even on the field. Sales of Blu-ray and DVD has fallen through the basement.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the reality is that the overwhelming majority of people are content with watching whatever is available on streaming.
Certainly that. I think that's how you get people watching movies like Ghosted or whatever on Apple TV Plus. Well, it's there, and I have there's a button that my thumb is hovering over. And at the same time, everything's kind of at the palm of our hands. If I want to watch anything, like for example, the other night I was thinking about that movie Blackberry. And I was like, wow, I totally missed that. I wanted to see that. So I just put it in like a search, and it's like, yeah, here it is, like everywhere. It's like, I don't know, just hit this button, you can watch it. So it really, and here's another example related, but a little different. What we're going to get to, sadly, William Friedkin and his passing, but I'd been meaning to rewatch Sorcerer for a while, and that just sort of lit a fire, and I was like, I want to watch it. And I saw that you got it on your Vudu, and I was like, even better. But I own it. I have it on Blu-ray. It's on a shelf 20 feet away from me, and I saw it on your Vudu, and I was like, oh, I actually thought even better. It's just so stupid because I paid like $20 for that thing, 5 years ago. And to be fair, I did. I was like, Brian, get up, go get it off the shelf. And I did pop the disc in, but it did illuminate like, I don't imagine, or I can't imagine another movie that I will probably buy a physical copy of in the near future. I don't know. So it's just too easy.
I mean, that's the thing, right? So do I think discs are going away? No, but I think, we've made this comparison before. I mean, it is going to become like vinyl, where increasingly it'll be niche companies that are targeting a more specific audience. Related to this, I was reading about how they released the score for Dial of Destiny on disc. In the last week or so, and apparently it was under printed or low printed or whatever. They didn't press enough copies.
Yeah,
and now that disc is going for crazy amounts of money on eBay.
Wow,
right? And I looked at that and I was like, well, content wise, there's nothing different between the physical disc and what's available on, Apple Music or whatever. And so for me, it was just an academic, like, oh, that's interesting. But definitely, I'm like, well, when's the last time I put an actual CD into a player? I can't remember.
The thing, right? Like, maybe it'd be fun to flip through the book and look at the artwork and whatever, but I don't even, I'd have to pull a player out of the closet or something,
Right. So, like my car, which admittedly I've had it for a little while now, I bought my car beginning of 08, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it comes with a 5-disc changer. So you can load it up with, you can load it up with 5 discs inside. And I've never once used that ever, as long as I've owned this car.
Really?
Right. Never. Yeah. I wouldn't be able to tell you how it works.
Uh-huh.
Because I just just plug in my device. Right.
I love that. I don't even know how it works.
I have no idea. Yeah. And I'm like, just 5 years earlier from when I bought the car, that would have been the most amazing thing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you had options with the 5 disc.
Yeah. That's right. And so, I mean, that's just the way of these things, right? I mean, fortunately, like I understand, like the real tragedy here is that there are libraries of films that are just going to blink out of existence. I don't mean in people's personal libraries. I mean studio libraries. Like, they're just not going to care about preserving everything.
Yeah. Well, going back to Sorcerer, I was reading sort of the linear notes that are included with the Blu-ray from Friedkin, and he was talking about, this movie was kind of lost for, over 30 years. And there was like some sort of hacked up version of it, which I'm not too familiar with that, but maybe through TV or whatever it was, but there wasn't like a really great definitive version available to the public that he was happy with. And so the Blu-ray was kind of a big deal. And so, yeah. I mean, you quite possibly lose like an avenue for things like that,
That's right.
For movies like that.
Yeah. So that's the real downside of physical media as a mainstream thing going away. It's unfortunate. However, I mean, again, we just have to acknowledge that that's just that's how this happens a lot. This isn't the first time. That's my point.
Yes. for sure. And
sorry, you were saying.
Well, it's sort of a funny side story that we were talking about is, there was a story that WandaVision was going to get a steelbook release, right? And
Yes.
steelbooks, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's like, say like Dark Knight comes out, right? And it's available on Blu-ray. But then there are these sort of special collector-y, unique releases with steelbooks where it's actually like a tin shell with a unique artwork on the front. And it just feels sort of like a collector item, for people who want to put those things on their shelves. So there's going to be a WandaVision, which was a Disney Plus show, was going to have a steelbook release. And it was going to come with, character cards, an envelope, a folder, slipcase, all sorts of little whistles and bells inside. But the only thing it wasn't going to come with is WandaVision. It was not going to include a disc or even a code to download it. Like, it's still only going to exist on Disney Plus, but for those who just like adding clutter to their bookshelves.
I was about to say, I was like, so here's the thing to just take up space.
Yeah. I mean, of course there is. I have that sometimes with books. I feel really happy when I finish a book and I put it on the shelf. Like, it feels like an accomplishment or something, so there, I understand the idea of enjoying sort of these things on your shelves. So addressing that, yes. But I think the main thing that we are talking about with physical media is it's nice to know that regardless of what happens with licensing, if something disappears from Apple one day, Apple TV or blah, 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 you have a copy in your hand that you will always be able to watch the thing. Right. And it's just funny that they're like, no, we're going to give you all the packaging and like a couple fun sorts of things, but we're not going to give you the thing. Like, it's like getting buying a magazine and getting the cover, but none of the pages inside, like it's so weird.
It's funny too that Disney said right from the start, like none of the Marvel Disney Plus shows would get physical media releases. And that itself kind of broke me of what was really just a habit where when a new MCU movie would come out, I would buy the disc. And so I was like, well, I don't have the complete MCU anyway, because that stuff isn't going to be available. So I just stopped buying the movies on disc too. So basically like after Endgame, I was like, well, that's a good place to end it. After that, I didn't
actually,
bother
that does
buying
feel like at least a bookend.
Yeah. So weirdly, Disney weaned me off of that habit.
It's funny. I was thinking as you just said that, like, oh, well, they just lost like $20, but then I thought, well, if they are choosing not to do this, that $20 the amount of people who are paying that $20 must really not matter very much. It's sort of like Homer, with the flaming bow, like, you just lost yourself a customer.
What?
Yeah, I'm okay. And here I'm over the cash register. Yeah.
Well, you were talking about William Friedkin, who really was at the forefront of film preservation, and he was certainly opinionated.
Yes.
You can say that. He just passed away this last week as we're in fact, I think like the day we recorded our last episode, he passed away shortly after that.
Yeah.
He directed The Exorcist and French Connection, and as you said, Sorcerer. And I was thinking, I was like, if the entirety of his career was just those three movies, he would have been in good shape. You know what I mean?
Right.
Had a lengthy career after that. Did a lot of television too. I don't think he ever matched what he achieved in the 70s, but nonetheless, he was 87 when he died, and he was working right up until the end.
Yeah. Yep. And for those who haven't seen it, I did end up rewatching Sorcerer, and man, what a good movie! It's just, it's this thriller, basically about these criminals who are having to hide, go off the grid in this South American town, and this oil well basically explodes, and the workers need dynamite to put the oil fire out. So these criminals with nothing to lose and everything to gain by getting more money and hopefully getting passports to leave the country, they're like, okay, we'll volunteer to do this, for those ways out. And so basically it's this tense like thriller of a movie where you've got two trucks with crazy unstable dynamite in the back going through treacherous jungle terrain and every sort of obstacle you can imagine. I mean, most famously, there's the truck trying to cross this rickety wooden bridge that's collapsing, beneath it, and other things. And it is just like a nail biter. It's so good. I really loved rewatching it. So I definitely recommend that.
And then of course, there is, and the Sorcerer was with Roy Scheider.
Yep.
And he had previously worked with Scheider on The French Connection, which is another one of those movies. Like, I feel like, I think people know it's like an important movie, but I would guess that not a lot of people have seen it, especially lately.
Yeah, probably. I did. That was one of my sort of obligation movies at one point. Like, oh, I should watch The French Connection.
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to watch it again. I've said this before, but when Netflix started, when it was a disc delivery service, I went through this whole, these are all the movies I should watch. And I just kind of plowed through them. And some of them didn't make a huge impression because it was almost like I was going through a checklist or something. And that was one of them where I was like, there are things I remember about it, but it didn't make a huge impression on me. I'd be kind of curious to revisit it.
That's another, when we talk about the risks of films being available only digitally, that's actually a good example of the potential pitfalls. I can't remember if you and I discussed this off the show, but there's an edit that was made to a line of dialogue where the main character, Popeye Doyle, who's a police officer played by Gene Hackman, he uses the N-word.
Mm-hmm.
And in the context of the film, well, he's a bad guy. I mean, he's not a bad guy. He's an unlikable guy, and he has questionable views, and that's part of the character. And that his use of that has been cut out. But and just to be clear, I'm not like I want to hear the N-word, but like it's a poorly done edit, and it feels like it's a change made to the film just for the sake of people's sensitivities without a broader view of the context in which that's used. And that's the only version of the film that's on digital now. I mean, it's a recent edit. Right.
Yeah, I remember reading about this a couple of weeks ago.
And I literally just a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking to see if William Friedkin talked about this at all, and if he had anything to say. I don't believe he discussed it, and then he passed away shortly thereafter, which is a shame. I'm not arguing in support of that kind of language, but I am saying, well, the film as it exists should remain the movie that exists.
Yeah, I'm
one
sure
that existed, I should say, as it existed.
Different ways. Yeah, but I was going to say that, and also it's interesting if it's coming out of the mouth of an unlikable person. You know what I mean? So it's ugly behavior from an ugly person. Like I can imagine feeling a little more conflicted if it's like your bright, shiny hero who's like a role model is like saying all these awful things. It's like, like,
right.
But if it's a ugly story starring an ugly person saying an ugly thing, it's like, well, that's kind of what this is, so yeah, it makes you wonder then, just moving forward, what will be the criteria for certain decisions that get made in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a piece in the New York Times when when this edit happened, right? And the critique that was offered, which I ultimately agree with, is that society is not frozen in amber. We go through changes, and I think that nowadays you would be very unlikely to hear a lead character use that word, and that's good. That's progress. A white character, certainly. But that doesn't mean that the fact that it was used in the past in a specific narrative context should be wiped out or wiped away, you know?
Yeah. You know, sort of going back to what I was saying and why I was saying it was more context. I actually was flipping channels the other day and Bill and Ted was on. And it was on not like Showtime or something. It was on Sci-Fi, I think. And it was coming up, you know, to that moment where they say like the F slur is what they call it now. And it's funny because it is this weird little sore thumb in this otherwise entirely sweet movie. And now, certainly, because I mean, growing up, you would hear that word a lot more commonly, and it was never right, but that was much more common to hear people saying. And so I was kind of curious how they would handle it on, you know, TV, so to speak. And what they did was basically it's like them hugging each other, and then they say that to each other. And in the TV cut, they basically hug one another, and then it just cuts to the next scene. And I was like, you know, I don't hate it. And maybe that's going to be a little controversial, but like, I understand the context of it in 1989, and I don't think it was right then either, but I understand it.
Right.
But certainly now, those characters are so lovable, and they love everybody. And so in 2023, it weirdly felt like an elegant little cut that also made them seem their love for each other stronger. Yeah. Like just ending on them hugging and then cutting to the next thing. I was like, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. And so then going to the French Connection thing, it's like, well, he's ugly, and it's from literally, you know, taking place in a different time that doesn't feel as evergreen, and it's an ugly thing that an ugly person does, and I can understand the context of that a little bit more. Not liking it at the same time.
Not liking it. I think that's important, right? Because in the inclusion, I mean, it's like, you know, Mark Twain, you know, there's a push to remove the N-word from Huck Finn.
Right.
And again, we can say, well, that word is wrong. However, it's historically A, accurate to the era, and B, that's the book as written, you know, and we should contextualize it and offer the ability to say, look, this is wrong, but, you know.
That seems to be the way they've gone with a lot of Warner cartoons, right?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And there's, hey, guess what, man? There's Warner cartoons that have racist depictions of Black people, of Japanese people, right? And so you not in any way saying that's okay, but you say, well, look, this is the historical era in which this emerged, you know. And I don't know if any of what I'm saying is particularly controversial or impolitic, but it always concerns me when this stuff is just chopped away and there's no ability to make the original version easily accessible.
Yeah. No, I just piggybacking on what you're saying. Like, I mean, obviously we're two voices and we represent two points of view, but like this is a big conversation for a lot of people to have a lot of opinions on. And actually, I'd be interested if anyone wanted to write in and say how they felt about these.
Yeah. But going back to William Friedkin in the 90s, he did the movie Jade, which
holy crap, he did Jade.
He did Jade, yeah. But a lot of people don't realize he did Jade. He actually said that was his favorite movie that he made. So it's quite a big
You're
fan.
kidding me. That now the you're kidding me is that's his favorite movie. Fascinating. I don't know that I've ever actually seen Jade, but for some reason it's gotten locked in my mind from that era. Maybe the name is just kind of memorable / weirdly kind of funny. I don't know why. From the Esther House sort of.
That's right.
90s domination. Right. The guy who wrote Basic Instinct, Showgirls, all that stuff.
Yeah. And that was famously supposed to be like part of the 1-2 punch that launched David Caruso into superstardom. Right. But instead it sent him plummeting back to the salt mines of network television. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Friedkin also directed a film in 1997, which I tend to recommend because not a lot of people have either heard of it or realize he did it. And it's the cable remake of 12 Angry Men.
I just rewatched the original. I would love to see a remake out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because it's like a cover. It's like
Sure.
a solid cover of a song that you like.
Sure.
And it stars Jack Lemmon in the Henry Fonda role.
Ah, I can see that.
Right. But the cast is just bananas. You got Courtney B. Vance, George C. Scott, who else is in it? Michael T. Williamson, Edward James Olmos, James Gandolfini, Tony Danza. Wow. You throw all those guys in a room, you're going to get something really interesting, right? And so, again, I really like the original one, the Henry Fonda one, but this is a very solid retake on it.
Is it a updated script, or is it like they took the same script and remade it?
It's almost exactly the same script. I think just the like the specific temporal references are changed.
Sure. Yeah.
So I got to go see this player or whatever. Like the little stuff, but it's in essence it's the same thing.
Right.
Very curious to hear your thoughts. I think the way Henry Fonda plays juror number 12 in one way, right, where he's very like he has one approach, and I would say it's sort of like the Henry Fonda character.
Sure.
And Lemon, like you can sort of imagine his approach circa, he kind of plays it like the old Gil approach.
That's kind of what I had in my head, and I was wondering if yeah, okay.
I mean, not exactly that, but you know what I mean.
Now, just wait a minute.
Yeah. It's a little bit of that. Yeah, I'm very curious what you think of it. I really like it though. So that's because in my classes I screen both just based on what mood I'm in. I'll either do the 50s one,
the power,
or because. Yeah. I mean, because they're both good. They're both doing the same thing. I'm like, no, I don't feel like doing this one.
Yeah.
So check that out. He also his final film is due out next month.
Oh.
The Kane Mutiny Court Martial. So it's supposed to debut at Venice in September. So
wow.
Yeah, great cast. Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Clarke. Look at this. Lance Reddick, who also just passed away.
Oh, yeah.
So this year has extracted a heavy toll.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we take another short break? We'll come back, talk about one of the new releases in theaters right now.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail, hold your hand through it all, smile bravely when it's time to let go, make your dreams come true. The things we do for love, only at David's Bridal.
And we are back. And hey, Brian, you know who else is back?
Who's that, Zachy?
Why, it's Leonardo, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Raphael, who is not, despite what a 1990 rap song will tell you, the leader of the group.
Right. What were they thinking?
Well, to this day, that's still a bee in my bonnet. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem is causing all kinds of mayhem at the box office. It's actually doing okay, Brian. We were talking about how everything is sort of fallen in the wake of the Barbenheimer explosion, but TMNT hanging in there.
Yeah, is this second weekend or third?
Mm-hmm.
Second weekend, something like that. And it's
as we are
I want to say
recording,
76 million. Something like that. I mean, that's
which
I kind of wondered. I just don't know where the Turtles exist for the current generation, I guess is what they've been one of those amazing IPs that have reinvented itself throughout the years, seemingly to success. But I didn't know at the moment. I mean, look at me. I'm like in my 40s, and I was like opening weekend. I mean, they still mean a lot to me. So I didn't know. Like your kids, like I didn't know if your kids were interested in this or if that's a thing they just know exists and it's kind of in the periphery.
My sense is that Ninja Turtles is like Transformers, where it is pretty much an evergreen. Okay, I didn't mean that was not an intentional pun, but it's kind of that there's like this version, and then that'll last for a little while, and then they'll come back a couple of years with a new version, and that'll be the thing for a little while,
right?
And it's just kind of what we do. So you can see why Nickelodeon, Viacom, why they purchased the Turtles a couple of years back.
Yeah,
because it is just one of those things that kids know it, kids get it, and everyone gets the gist of it. And I think, to be honest, the film, which we'll talk about more in just a little bit, but the film kind of gets that everybody already gets it.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And so, the fact that it is performing, that makes me happy. I definitely did not expect the reviews to be as sort of overwhelmingly positive as they've been. Surprised the crap out of me, and I think especially because we're coming 7 years after the last movie,
right?
Which I liked. Didn't make much of a mark, although I liked it then. I like it still. It had the misfortune of coming right after the first of the Michael Bay produced movies, which I don't think anybody liked.
Yeah.
And I
remember them very well.
I rewatched the second one relatively recently, and I thought it was fun, but it was sort of working with these horrific designs for the Turtles.
Yeah.
That I don't think anybody was a fan of, right? And I think that's what with this, and like I said, the second one, which, if you have not seen it and you're a fan of like the 80s Turtles, I'm telling you, watch it. Turtles Out of the Shadows from 2016. It's, in my opinion, it's a good movie, and I think folks will enjoy it. That said, it's understandable that they sort of they just decided to broom all that, start over. And Seth Rogen, who wrote and produced it along with Evan Goldberg, has made a film that I think it plays on people's familiarity with just the general, the basics.
Yes.
But it also does its own thing. So I'm very curious. I mean, where did you land when it came to this movie?
I enjoyed the crap out of this movie.
Wow. Okay.
I was anticipating this movie. I just love the Turtles. Like they were really big for me when I was a kid. And it's funny you say that, the way that they're just this property, these characters where you're like, you get it. And that really is because they are so well defined. I mean, Leonardo the leader, Michelangelo the fun-loving guy. Like they are really solid archetypes, and they are really lovable characters. And they also, it's not just their personalities, but their roles. And so you could continue to reinvent these guys, and they are already perfect. So it's more a matter of, can you craft a good story around them? And I already love these characters. I was excited to just spend more time with whatever version of these characters. And I really loved this take. I really loved this story. I thought it was kind of unique in a lot of ways. I mean, their origin has some similarities, but there are also some differences. And this, the Shredder isn't the villain in this movie. It's a lot about identity. This is like, hey, let's focus on what it feels like to be these guys. And that goes, all the way breaking it down to like the cast, like let's actually cast teenagers to play these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I thought was amazing, an amazing decision. I loved the kids. They were so good. And so then if they're really that young, it's like, well, what are people this young thinking about? It's like, they just want to like fit into the world. And that's really what the arc is of this movie, is about like them feeling lonely in the sewers and wishing they could fit into the world. They want to go to high school, like there's this scene at the beginning of the movie, where they're watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off and kind of sad, like they want to do that. And I was like, this is so good. Like, not that other movies haven't tapped into this, but like, I just like that was the heart of this movie. Like these four kids trapped, with an overprotective father and wanting to figure out how they can go and exist in the world like any teenager would. And then, of course, there's fantastical elements that come into play that are related to their wanting to fit in. It's all. I just thought the script was really thoughtful in how everything kind of is related to the heart of the movie. Every character has sort of, we'll get into it in spoilers, but even down to Splinter, having an opinion on what's going down and has to grow. Everyone has an arc in this movie, and the arc is through the chaos in the third act action and whatever. It helps everyone to grow in a certain way. And so I just thought that it was really thoughtful, heartfelt, and satisfying at the end of the day. And so for me, this was a really, really enjoyable experience with these characters. How about you?
Yeah, just to circle back to what I was saying about Out of the Shadows. One of my favorite moments in that movie doesn't involve, Krang and the Technodrome or whatever. It's a scene where the Turtles have broken into a police station, and these cops have them at gunpoint, and one of them is like, they're monsters or something like that. And you see, we go in close on Michelangelo, and you see his eyes start about to water, and he says, just quietly, he's like, "We're not monsters,"
Yeah.
And that's literally one of my favorite moments in any of these types of movies, because I'm like, they're just kids, and it would hurt to be called that, And so I like that this movie takes that germ of an idea and really expands on it and says, to your point, what is it like to be a kid who's dealing with this? And that's, there have been so many versions of the Turtles over the years, for, 40 years at this point, that basically the sum total of them being teenage is they say dude and they eat pizza.
It's yeah.
Right. And I'm like, well, that's like a 40-year-old stoner also.
Right. Yeah.
Teenagers in 2023 are not the same as teenagers in 1983, and sure. I like that this kind of delves into what it's like to be a teenager right now, here and now, that need to belong. I think also making April a teenager as well. And I don't know if that's something they've done in other versions. I don't keep up with it, but I thought that was actually a pretty clever way of bringing her into the mix.
I think it makes sense, especially in this take.
Yeah. I hate to say this, but like, as soon as I saw that, April is black, right away, I was picturing like the YouTube videos.
Did it happen? I have to assume it did. I just probably tuned that stuff out.
Probably, yeah. I haven't paid attention, but it's like, I hate that there's an entire economy devoted to just like bitching about that stuff.
Right.
But the like you said, like I thought it was clever to tie in the Turtles origin with Baxter Stockman.
Yeah.
And sort of weaving in Bebop and Rocksteady and all those other, Playmates action figures that have been crammed into this movie. Mm-hmm. They all came from the same soup, basically.
Yeah, and when I saw that, there was a little part of me that, with the trailers and stuff, I was like, I kind of want to see Shredder because that's Darth Vader. That's the guy I know, most.
Yeah.
And some of these characters, mutants, I remember. Some of them I kind of don't. But I didn't feel that way by the end of the movie. I felt like the movie, that's what the movie's about, really, is these characters who feel different. It's kind of similar to X-Men. I've seen people say, where it's like they feel other, right? And so there are people who want to figure out how they can fit in, and there are other characters who are like, how can we step on everyone else? Push everyone else down and elevate ourselves. And that's where you get sort of the different ideologies at play here, and which I thought was, I guess I'm speaking so vaguely, because I just don't want to spoil anything because it was all such a fun surprise to me. But Splinter, I thought Splinter's point of view was really interesting and kind of unique.
Yeah.
I will say, before getting into spoilers, so we can talk about more like details and stuff, but the thing that felt interesting was the ninjutsu of it all kind of felt a little tacked on to their story in this version.
Yeah, I had that thought as well. Yeah.
It didn't really come naturally. It just felt like, right?
Yeah, it felt like they kind of did the same thing as the two Michael Bay movies, where Splinter is just like, oh, sure, martial arts, and he doesn't have a direct connection to it, the Hamato Yoshi of it all.
Exactly. Right? It's not like something he learned from his master. It's not a part of his history. Yeah. And in a funny way, in this version, it's like, well, the world is kind of a scary place, so you should learn to defend yourself. So we're going to watch like YouTube videos on karate,
Yes.
Almost like Daniel LaRusso, looking at a karate book in his apartment, just trying to learn how to kick.
That's right. Yeah. But, and if I'm honest, I'm not crazy about that, but I'm also like, we get it,
Same. It wasn't enough, but it was enough for me to think about it.
Yes.
And the thing is also, they're not out. This movie doesn't begin with them as crime fighters. They're just people trying to exist in the shadows. And then we get to see like them. Well, let's use this defensive stuff we've learned, to help this person. And they kind of suck at it, which, by the way, I loved that scene. That scene was so much fun. And set to Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely loved. I found it to be a super fun scene because, in any origin story, it's not a surprising take, but they're not very good at it. And they're learning how to be coordinated, So there is that. Like they're not out to be crime fighters at the beginning of this film. It's just sort of like self-defense that they've learned. Although they do carry weapons.
Which seems, ill-advised. When Donatello gets the star in his leg and the way he screams, it's seriously one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
That was when I saw that in the trailer, I was like, I am so in. Like that is adorable and hilarious. And I've never seen the turtle sound like that before.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we want to get into spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it. Just so we can talk a little bit more.
Spoilers.
Now, just getting into the thing I didn't want to spoil because I thought it was really rich and fun was, you have this whole arc with Splinter where he's afraid of the real world because of his experience as a rat out there. And so he imparts that to his kids. And, there's this really adorable sequence where they're little kids, right? And he's being like this dad to them, and they see the colors of the outside world through a sewer grate. And, he's like, no, outside world is scary.
As a dad, Brian, I can't count the number of times I've told my kids, I pulled them aside and said, if you're not careful, people are going to capture you and milk you. So yes. I relate so much to that,
which is such a funny runner. But yeah, so then he becomes prejudiced to humans through this. And you can understand, his experiences are not great with the interactions with people, but then to have the villain, Superfly, who's like, yeah, well, humans are like this, and so we're gonna turn every human into a mutant. We'll be the dominating whatever. Or
it's a total Magneto plan.
It 100%. And so then when Splinter sees like, Superfly basically has that, we're not so different. We feel the same way. Like, why don't you want to hurt everybody like me? And Splinter having that realization, like, oh, like, well, I don't want to be like that. I was like, right. I love that. Yeah. That's really, I've not seen Splinter learn a lesson like that before, and so then the end becomes this thing. I mean, you could probably checklist some of the movies that it's referencing. I mean, X-Men for starters, but then at the end where, once the turtles are revealed and they're trying to save New York from this Godzilla-sized Superfly, human beings are reacting scared and like being like, ooh, all mutants are bad, and, through April's help, it's like, no, these turtles are trying to help. And then you get that sort of Spider-Man 2 moment where the humans are like, well, let's help them. Mm-hmm. And, this is one of my huge things. Like, I don't know what it is, but when I see movies and I see groups of people helping other groups of people, I just tear up. And I did. Like when the human put his hand out to Splinter and Splinter winced.
I loved that.
Like, what's this guy going to do? And he helps him up. I was like, I love this movie. I love this movie. And then it becomes this huge game of like, get the chemical that will stop Superfly to the turtles. And it's all these human beings helping, driving their cabs, putting stuff on cranes to lift it up to them. I was like, this is wonderful. That really like tied the bow on an experience I was already enjoying from the start.
Yeah. And by the way, I thought Ice Cube was great. He cracked me up.
He was so good. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of just funny. He's like, don't call me cuz, like
right. Yeah.
It is a lot of Seth Rogen telling all his buddies, hey, just come hang out for an afternoon and screw around on Mike. Right. But I'm like, that's what this is. There's also that, Brian, which is like, this is a brand that gets put through the Veg-O-Matic every couple of years and we get a new version. Right.
Yes.
So I'm like, well, this is this version for a couple of years. That I expect there'll probably be one or two more of these, and then there'll be the other one, and
totally.
And right. So that makes it easier to be like, well, let's just see what they do with it.
Yes.
Right. Cause like in this one, my wife afterwards, she was like, wait, aren't Bebop and Rocksteady like bad guys? It seems like they're friends with Turtles now. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens in the next one. Right. Like, yeah. Well, it's doing something different. Like no other version has had the Turtles go to high school.
Yeah, literally. Like it ends in a really like, oh, well, where do we go from here kind of place?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That's exciting storytelling, honestly.
Yeah. And to some extent, when I saw the post-credit tease where we allude to your man Shredder, I was a little bit like, oh, because I almost like would have preferred this just be like this one done thing, and
I mean, obviously, I want to spend more time with these iterations because I enjoyed them, but I at the same time agree with you because this was a very satisfying tale. Yeah.
Right. Like in the sense that, well, to go past it means to sort of have to undo some of what they accomplished here, probably, I'm interested, and I noted this in my review. Like I hope that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg stick around for a little while and we get to see more of that. But yeah, it's again, I think it's an interpretation of the Turtles that exists because this is a franchise that just allows the ingredients to be mixed up every couple of years.
Totally. Totally. And it's fun seeing the new takes on these people, but sticking to the things we sort of know, like you were saying,
yes.
Like Raphael and his anger, like just cracked me up, when they were like in that garage and they're like, I don't know, like, are we going to be able to do this? And he's like, I dream about fighting every night. And they're like, dude, are you all right? That was hilarious. And Leonardo, he's kind of like the square at the beginning, he's, and the one who will tell on them. And then by the end, him understanding his brothers more than anybody and setting them up like, all right, here's the plan. and becoming the leader. Like that was very satisfying to watch. So it's like we know this stuff, but seeing it redone in a fresh and fun way is just satisfying.
I think so. And you know, I think to some extent, at least for me, and I, you know, you can chime in if this is applicable for you, but like I view Ninja Turtles 1990 the same way I view Batman 89.
Totally.
Right? Where I'm like, that's like, you know, ground zero for me.
Yep.
And so I don't need anything else to be that because I already got that.
Sure.
And so everything else can just be variations on theme and you appreciate it. You know, it's like we liked the Batman last year as like, well, this is a variation, but Batman 89 is still Batman 89.
Totally.
And
exactly.
And I think, right. I think there's something very freeing about just being able to do that and be like, yeah, well, this is this one.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look at it within that lens. And which, by the way, it's worth mentioning, Ninja Turtles 1990 had two objectively awful sequels.
Yeah, right.
So even within that franchise, they were never able to match what that first movie did.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although I have to admit I am endeared to 2, but that is strictly for nostalgia reasons.
Nostalgia's doing a lot of the lifting.
Yeah. I honestly think a little 2-Raff might be one of the funniest
that's funny.
I've heard
that
in
too.
My lifetime.
That
will
funny.
live on forever in my brain as like one of the funniest lines from a movie.
And of course Kevin Nash playing the Shredder there at the end, the Super Shredder.
Right. I was like, wait, is that right? Because I was trying to think of the voice of Splinter, what his name was. Kevin Clash?
Kevin Clash, who is Elmo, but Kevin Nash, the wrestler, was the Super Shredder at the end.
Okay, so that's why my brain like short circuited for 2 seconds.
Short circuited.
But yeah, I mean, it's just
and real quick, Brian. Yeah, we're giving a lot of props to Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. I would say, understandably.
Right.
However, Jeff Rowe, who directed the movie, he did the Mitchells versus the Machines, and he brought something very specific and special to the visual style, which we have not talked about at all.
I wanted to make sure we touched on that. So, I mean, speaking of Across the Spider-Verse, I think it's natural that people are making comparisons, right? Yeah. Where for a very long time, animation looks a certain way. And, you know, Pixar obviously sort of set the bar with the CG look. And then, you know, whether it's Sony or whoever else, their movies are Pixar-esque, you could say, at least in visual presentation. Then Spider-Verse kind of, you know, completely blows everything up and is like, you can do anything. And certainly from the trailers, I think people were like, oh, this looks like Spider-Verse Turtles. Yes. So what did you think watching the whole film? I mean, did you feel like it was too much like that? Did you enjoy how it looked? Do you wish it had been a little more traditional?
No, in terms of it being traditional, because we got a traditional CG animated version of the Turtles in, what was it, like 2005, I think, 2006, right?
TMNT, I think it's called.
TMNT, right? Which I think that movie is totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also not, or has not been very, like, it hasn't stayed in my memory.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with this one, I like that they were kind of pushing on the boundaries. I don't think it's not like quote unquote doing Spider-Verse, but I think Spider-Verse did the work of saying, hey, there's no like right way for this type of movie to look. And so Agreed. They were able to do right. And so they were able to do something totally different. I love the turtle designs. They're so good.
Me too. I heard someone else say it well, where it feels like they're made out of clay, and then someone took like a colored pencil and drew over it.
That's so perfect. I love that.
Right? I was like, yeah, that is what it looks like. And their bodies look different. You know, they don't look like 4 things with different colored eye masks on, right? Like they have different body types, and I really dug that.
It's interesting how it seems like that more recent versions of the Turtles have really done that, where it makes them look different, right? Like certainly, you know, when we were growing up, the 80s cartoon and even the 90s movies, they all physically look basically the same.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was Roger Ebert in his review talking about how you can't, like, other than the cartoon, the colors of their bandanas, you can't tell them apart. And and I'm always like, ask any kid who grew up with the Turtles, anybody can tell you exactly who they are, right?
Right.
I like that there is more of an effort to make each of them look distinct. Raph is slightly bigger and Donnie's a little bit thinner and whatever. But there's they are animated in a way that definitely it remind less than Spider-Verse. It reminded me of the Bad Guys.
Oh, which I haven't seen.
I'd be curious what you think of that, because I did like that movie.
Yeah.
But I think the Turtles have one style of animation, and then the various other mutants have a different style, and I think that was also an interesting choice.
Yeah, I'll admit some of the humans I found like a little perhaps over stylized. Like they almost look like Picasso paintings, like very asymmetrical, and it'll be interesting moving forward when they interact with more humans, if that becomes like distracting or something. I mean, a lot of it is, most of the humans we see are villains, so they are kind of squashy and unpleasant, and
like for example, Baxter Stockman right in the beginning.
Right.
He looks like like Spitting Image. You ever see that show that you're talking about?
I don't know.
We got some UK listeners who I know will catch that reference, but he looks like a clay, without Spitting Image as a reference. I don't know, like a person who's kind of screwed up looking. Yeah, there you go.
Okay,
Picasso. Sorry, I don't know.
but yeah, no, I dug it. I thought it was fun. Like it felt like it didn't have to adhere to any rules, which I think it was the Across the Spider-Verse or Spider-Verse influence. But I did, feel like it found its own thing, which I enjoyed. There's a lot of of scribbles on screen, which I thought was interesting. Yep. Like if you look at their chests, it literally looks like someone took a pencil and went zap 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 zap. And like it was kind of fun to like watch them turn and see the scribbles sort of move, or sometimes they were alive. It felt like a sketchbook.
Yes, I was about to say it felt like an attempt to evoke like the original comic book version that Eastman and Laird did.
Yeah,
while updating the look of the Turtles to be more modern and distinctive, but sort of pay homage to the idea that, well, this did all originate with like these kids essentially making this comic book.
Yeah. So I mean, big thumbs up for me. I mean, I can see myself watching this again and enjoying it, and I had that feeling when it ended. I was like, I think this is going to be like one of those like comfort foodie things for me, like when it's on TV and stopping on it and just.
I'm definitely looking forward to revisiting it. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, too, I really have to compliment. I mean, the filmmaking. Let's credit everybody, but like, it had a point for them, like becoming who they want to be, learning to find their place in the world, but like choosing to be heroes. That's kind of it at the end. Like there's that moment with Leonardo being like, it's one thing to be a hero when people want your help, but sometimes people don't want your help and you still have to be a hero. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he says. Like, even though these people have turned on him, they need a hero right now. And maybe we can be those people. And I was like, man, this is just good stuff. Like I'm glad it has that extra component of it versus just stopping the guy. There was a real emotional resonance to everything that was happening. And that's what put it over the edge for me.
I think in that vein, we should also applaud the filmmakers for avoiding the urge to put Holding Out for a Hero by Bonnie Tyler as one of the needle drops.
Was there a moment that made you think it was going to happen?
I was worried only because I don't need to hear that song anymore.
You're unlocking something in my head. You even saying that, I was like, I feel like there was a moment I felt like that was about to happen. And I thought, no way. But no, I agree. And it's too bad because I do like that song.
Yes.
just, and it has been used effectively before, but now everybody is like sort of taking it and running with it, and it's wearing it out.
Wearing it out. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, other thoughts on Mutant Mayhem?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I like that April had an arc also. She wasn't just sort of like a friend. She had her high school experience.
She was vomiting and then she stopped vomiting.
Yes, yeah. A little gross, but funny. But yeah, like they all had their motivations, and I enjoyed that. I enjoy a script that really pins all that stuff down, and you're not just excited to see the action, like you actually care about everybody and what they're setting out to do. And I think really, like I've already said this, but that's what really put it over the edge for me. I was like, this is a thoughtful script that is trying to do something with these characters, and I really appreciated that. And I felt it. I felt satisfied when those things were accomplished at the end.
Well, based on the aforementioned mid-credit tease, you will get your wish to see them square off against the Shredder. So
yeah,
let's see how that goes.
Curious who they'll get to play Shredder.
Yeah, that should be interesting. Do you remember
the origin too?
Well, I was about to say, do you remember in the 2014 movie how they originally cast William Friedkin to play the Shredder? Do you remember this?
Yes.
And then there was like so much uproar that they changed it at the last minute so that he was just like working for the Shredder.
Right.
But it was very obvious that they did like a little cut and paste in post-production.
Right.
So I think it's interesting how like there's certain boundaries that they have to stay within in order for it to feel right.
Mm-hmm.
So
totally.
I'm curious. I'm curious what boundaries they push against and what stuff they double down on.
Yeah.
But that's what we thought of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Tell us what you thought. You can always email us your thoughts at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. If you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. Also look for my reviews and writing at the San Francisco Chronicle and IGN, and also at The Wrap, where I will be reviewing Ahsoka, the new Disney Plus series, which I expect we'll be talking about in our next episode, probably.
Yeah.
What do you got going on, Brian?
Well, I mentioned it last episode, but episodes of Young Jedi Adventures, new ones, have recently dropped on Disney Plus and are airing on Disney Junior. And episodes I've written, episodes many other talented people have written as well. It's been really cool seeing the response to the show. You work on it for 2 years or something before it's out there, and now seeing all these pictures online of kids dressing up like the characters, and people are texting me pictures of their kids watching the show, and it's just amazing getting to see an audience finally connect with it. So very proud of the show. And Disney Plus, Disney Junior.
Nice. And as I say each and every episode, please, if you like what we are doing, go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, leave a star rating. Wherever you're listening to the show, if you wouldn't mind dropping a review to help spread the word, that would be great. And if you're not subscribing, please make sure you do that, because all of that helps us out a little bit. And with that, on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, my name is Zaki Hassan. This has been Movie Film 275. We will catch you next time.
Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Jackie and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail. Hold your hand through it all. Smile bravely when it's time to let go. Make your dreams come true. The things we do for love. Only at David's Bridal.
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do have a favorite child.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
I use memes as a coping mechanism.
It's Mattress Firm's once-a-year sale and clearance. Get up to 60% off select Sealy, plus a free adjustable base, all with free and fast delivery. Deals this big won't last long, so don't miss out. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.